We continue with the IS 37 provisions. Next, we'll look at contingent liabilities. The standards gives us a definition of a contingent liability. A contingent liability is an uncertain liability that does not meet the three criteria of recognizing a provisions. Instead, the standard defines a contingent liability as follows: that it's a possible obligation that arises from past events and whose existence will be confirmed only by the occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more uncertain future events, not wholly within the control of the entity. Two keywords that you want to look out for when you're reading questions to do with provisions. You look at the word probable. Probable, it means it's a provision. Possible, it means it's a contingent liability. So as you read the questions, look out for the words probable, look out for the word possible, and look out for another word, remote. These are the three most common words which the examiner likes using. Probable, we make a provision. Possible, we do not make a provision. Then it's a contingent liability. Instead, we disclose in the notes. A contingent liability we disclose in the notes. A contingent liability is also defined as a present obligation that arises from past events, but it is not recognized because it is not probable that an outflow of economic resources will be required to settle the obligation. The amount of the obligation also cannot be measured with sufficient reliability. Therefore, we disclose as a note in the financial statements. To illustrate a contingent liability, we've got company A, which has entered into an agreement to act as guarantor on a bank loan taken out by Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith is a financially secure individual, and the directors are of the opinion that the chances of him defaulting on the loan are slim. How should the company account for this guarantee? The company has a present obligation, which is that it has given a guarantee, so it is legally obliged to honor the guarantee. However, as the likelihood of company A having to pay out under the guarantee is not probable, then no provision for the liability should be made. Instead, the guarantee should be disclosed in the notes as a contingent liability. Unless if it is considered to be remote, then in this case would have to ignore it. Any questions so far on contingent liabilities before we move to contingent assets? Okay, we proceed to the last segment of IS 37, which is the contingent assets. The standard defines a contingent asset as a possible asset that arises from past events and whose existence will be confirmed only by the occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more uncertain future events, not wholly within the control of the entity. Contingent assets should only be disclosed in the notes where an outflow of economic benefits is probable. Otherwise, they should be ignored. But if the probability of an inflow of economic benefits is virtually certain, then the asset is not a contingent asset and should be recognized in the financial statements. Any question up to that point? If there's no question, then we are done with I-37. From the examining point of view, most questions usually come from the provision side. In terms of weighting, I would say 80% or 70% weighting will come from provisions, and the rest from contingent liabilities. Contingent assets, we are looking at maybe 1-2% in terms of weighting. So be sure that you are very comfortable with the provisions and the liability side. Definitely there you certainly meet some questions. So that concludes our session on provisions.